The alien throne room was silent, cold, and full of sharp eyes. Jackson stood tall in the middle, his boots still muddy from the battlefield. His uniform torn at the shoulder where plasma had nearly ended him. Guards in silver armor lined the walls. Motionless as statues, their weapons resting, but always ready. And at the far end of the room, sitting on a high black throne made of stone and bone, was the Queen of the Vernari Empire. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes glowing gold, and her long silver hair flowed like living light. She stared down at the human, her face calm, unreadable. "You saved 3 of my patrols from certain death," she said, in a voice that echoed through the hall like distant thunder. "Yet you are human, a creature of Earth, and our sworn enemy. Why?" Jackson's throat was dry, but his voice didn't shake. They were surrounded. He said, "Hi. I had a chance to run, but I didn't, because no one deserves to die like that, not even your people." There was a pause, long and heavy. The Queen leaned forward slightly. "That is noble." "Or foolish." She raised one long finger, and a royal guard stepped forward. Holding a scroll of shining metal, "The Council sees your actions as a sign of goodwill," she said. "But goodwill is not loyalty. And without loyalty, there can be no peace between our kind." Jackson narrowed his eyes. "What kind of loyalty are you asking for?" A soft sound broke the tension footsteps, light and slow, from behind a curtain of golden fabric. A young woman stepped into view. She was tall and slender, like the Queen. But her eyes held something softer curiosity, maybe even sadness. Her violet skin shimmered slightly under the throne lights, and her silver dress moved like liquid metal. "This is my daughter, Princess Virea," the Queen said. "And she will decide your fate." Jackson blinked, confused. "Your daughter?" Vera stepped closer to him, her gaze never leaving his. "Our Queen," she said slowly, choosing each word with care, "demands proof of loyalty before she agrees to the Earth Vernari peace talks." Jackson nodded. "Fine, name the proof." The room went quiet again. Virea looked up at her mother once, then back at him, her voice dropping to a whisper only he could hear. "Only mating can convince her." Jackson froze. He thought he misheard her. Or maybe it was a joke, but her face was serious, her voice steady. He glanced around, unsure if the guards would laugh or strike him down. But no one moved. Even the Queen remained silent, watching. "You're saying." Jackson began, but Virea cut him off softly. "It is our way," she said. "In our culture, to mate is to share mind, memory, and soul. No lies can survive the bond, only truth." Jackson took a step back, shaking his head slowly. "This isn't diplomacy. It's something else." Viera didn't chase him, didn't argue. She just looked at him with those glowing eyes and said, "If you walk away, the talks will end. The war may begin again, and I will be cast out for suggesting this. You're risking exile just by saying that." He asked. "Yes," she said, "because I believe you're not like the others." Jackson looked at the Queen again, still sitting silently on her throne. Was she testing him? Was this some kind of trap? Or was it really their ancient way? His heart pounded hard in his chest. On Earth, this would be madness, but out here. He wasn't on Earth. The silence in the throne room grew heavy, waiting for his answer. He opened his mouth, but no words came. The Queen finally stood up, her voice colder now. "Decide before the sun set," she said, "or leave and never return." Jackson turned slowly, walking away from the throne, every step echoing in the vast chamber. Virea's whisper stayed in his mind. Only mating can convince her, outside the palace. The twin suns of Vernari Prime were beginning to fall behind the crystal peaks. Jackson stood on the balcony, staring into the sky, where stars were already starting to appear. He had fought aliens, negotiated with warlords, and seen people die for peace. But he had never been tested like this. And somewhere deep inside, a strange thought rose: was this really about peace? Or something more? The palace walls felt colder after the Queen's demand. Jackson leaned on the stone railing of the high balcony. Watching the twin suns vanish behind the ice-tipped peaks, his mind was a storm, and no wind in the alien breeze could calm it. He had fought, bled, and negotiated through war zones, but nothing had prepared him for this. Not the battlefield, not the politics, not even the quiet whisper from a royal daughter. Only mating can convince her. The words kept echoing like thunder. In his head, he had expected a mission, a test of strength or strategy, maybe even a speech, but not this. Behind him, the faint sound of steps brushed the polished floor. He turned and saw Viraya standing there, without guards, without robes of ceremony, just her in a soft, silken wrap that shimmered in the dying light. Her eyes met his, and he saw no pride, there only honesty and something like fear. "You didn't run," she said gently, her voice not royal now, just real. "That means something." "I didn't stay either," Jackson replied. "I'm still thinking." She nodded, moving closer, her gaze falling to the floor. "My people trust memory sharing more than words," she said. "We don't believe what cannot be seen or felt. Especially from humans." He let out a short breath, not quite a laugh, not quite a sigh. "And mating with me proves my loyalty." "That's insane." "Not to us," she said. "To us, it's sacred. It joins our minds, lets us feel truth. And what if I lie?" he asked, looking her in the eye. "You can't," she answered softly. "The bond strips away lies." "I would see everything." He paused, something tightening in his chest. "So this isn't just physical," he said. "It's something deeper." "Yes," she said. "Deeper than either of us may be ready for." She stepped beside him, gazing at the stars rising beyond the cliffs. "I didn't want to say it in front of my mother, but I asked to choose," she said, surprising him. "I wanted to be the one who decided which human was worthy, and you chose me." Jackson said, confused. "I watched the recordings," she admitted. "You covered a wounded soldier with your body, even though the fight wasn't yours. You gave up your escape ship to carry 2 of our injured. You smiled at a Varnari child who had never seen kindness from a human." Jackson swallowed hard, the memories still fresh. "I didn't do those things to impress anyone," he said quietly. "Exactly," she whispered. "That's why I chose you." Silence fell again, but this time it was softer, not heavy, not tense. The kind of silence that let feelings rise between words. Finally, Jackson turned to her, his voice steady. "If I say yes, what happens next?" Viraya looked up at him, eyes glowing. Softly in the twilight, "We go to the bonding chamber," she said. "There, we share memories. Pain, joy, everything. After that, my mother will know your heart, and you." He asked, "What do you get from this?" She blinked, then smiled faintly. "Maybe I'll finally know mine," she said. The words struck deeper than he expected. He stepped forward, not touching her, just close enough to feel her warmth. "Are you afraid?" he asked. "Terrified," she said, "but also hopeful." He nodded slowly, breathing in the cold alien air. "I didn't come here to fall in love with an empire," he said, "but maybe I found something better." For the first time since arriving in the palace, she laughed, a soft, beautiful sound that echoed across the balcony. Then she offered her hand, not as a princess, not as a political keyboot, as someone willing to trust him. He took it. Neither of them spoke as they walked together down the long halls. Past the silver flames and ancient carvings of the Varnari guards didn't stop them, and no nobles whispered. It was as if the palace itself had chosen to remain still for this moment. The doors of the bonding chamber waited ahead, glowing with soft blue light. And as they stepped inside, the silence gave way to something ancient, powerful, and full of unknowns. Jackson didn't know what he would see in her memories, or what she'd find in his. But one thing was clear. Now this wasn't just about peace or loyalty anymore. It was about truth. And maybe something like destiny, waiting on the other side of that glowing door. The door closed behind them with a soft hum, sealing Jackson and Virea inside the bonding chamber. It wasn't a bedroom, like he feared, nor a medical lab like he half expected. It looked like a temple. Tall crystal pillars rose from the floor, glowing softly with blue light. The air smelled like rain, fresh and clean, but charged with something ancient. In the center of the room was a round platform, floating just above the floor, with two shallow seats made of light and energy. This is the Heartlink Circle, Virea said, her voice soft. Once we sit, the connection begins. We cannot stop it midway. Jackson looked around, uneasy. Has any human ever done this before? No, she said quietly. You'll be the first. Great. He muttered under his breath. No pressure. She smiled faintly, but didn't laugh this time. Instead, she stepped toward the platform and sat down. Her movements slow, careful. Like she was stepping into a dream, Jackson hesitated, then followed. Lowering himself into the seat across from her, the moment he touched it, the platform responded. Glowing brighter beneath their feet, his skin tingled like static touched every nerve. But it wasn't painful, just strange. Now look at me, she said. Don't break eye contact. He did as told. Locking eyes with hers, Virea's pupils began to glow, and the blue light around them pulsed like a slow heartbeat. Then something cracked open in his mind, not with sound, but with feeling. Suddenly, he wasn't just sitting, he was falling. Falling through her memories, he saw her as a child, standing in cold royal halls while her mother lectured warriors. He saw her alone in her sleeping pod, staring at the ceiling, whispering poems in a language no one else cared to hear. He felt her sadness when her only friend, a guard trainee, was taken away for showing emotion. He felt her fear when the war began, and she overheard the Queen say, "The humans must kneel or burn." It was overwhelming. Her pain was deep, but hidden under layers of calm, just like her mother's voice, measured, perfect, distant. Then suddenly, the images changed. He was back on Earth, but not through his own eyes, through hers. She had watched footage of him, studied reports, stared at photos she wasn't supposed to keep to her. He wasn't just a soldier, but a question she kept asking herself. Why does he fight for those who aren't his own? Why does he smile when he has nothing to gain? She had seen him lift a burning beam off a trapped alien child and stay behind while the shuttle flew away. And in that moment, Jackson felt something strange. Virea had admired him long before she met him. The connection pulled deeper, and now she was inside his mind. She saw Earth through his eyes, his sister's laughter, the grave of his best friend, the sound of coffee boiling on an old ship stove. She saw the horror of war, the face of a comrade dying in his arms, the guilt he carried like a backpack he could never put down. She saw his first view of her, the surprise, the suspicion, and something else he hadn't admitted. Wonder. Then suddenly, everything stopped. The light dimmed, and they were back in the chamber, breathless, both sweating and wide-eyed. Jackson looked at her and realized she was crying, not sobbing, but quiet tears running down her cheeks. "I saw everything," she whispered, "even the part where you almost gave up." He nodded, wiping his face. "I saw your loneliness. It wasn't fair." She looked away, then back. "You didn't turn away from me, neither did you," he said, voice rough. The energy platform faded beneath them, lowering back to the floor. They stood together in silence, not needing words. Now, not after what they'd just shared. The door opened without a sound, and the Queen stood there, surrounded by council members and guards. Her golden eyes studied them both, but her expression didn't change. "You bonded?" she said simply. Jackson didn't reply. Vera stepped forward. Voice steady. I saw no lie in him. The Queen looked at Jackson, her gaze piercing. "And you?" she asked. "I saw truth in her," he replied. "And strength?" The Queen raised her hand, and the guards stepped back. "Then you may remain for now," she said. "But peace is not yet secured." Jackson frowned. "What more do you want?" The Queen turned slowly, her silver hair trailing like a banner behind her. "Loyalty must survive fire," she said, "and fire still waits." Then she walked away, leaving them in the glow of the fading light, unsure what storm was coming next. The next morning, the sky over Varnari Prime was red not with fire, but with ceremonial smoke. Jackson stood near a wide stone balcony facing the high peaks. Wrapped in a strange mix of calm and tension, the bond had changed something in him. Not just his mind, but his pulse, his breath, the way he now sensed another person's emotions without a single word. Virea was quiet beside him, arms folded, her face unreadable again. But he could feel her nervousness, the way her chest tightened and her thoughts flickered like wings trapped under glass. They hadn't spoken much since the chamber. Some things were too raw, too deep to talk about right away. A royal advisor arrived, silent as shadow, and gave a slow bow. "His Grace, the High Chancellor, requests your presence in the circle of elders," he said to Jackson. Alone. Jackson looked at Virea, but she didn't move. "It's the next step," she said softly. "You shared your mind with me. Now the elders want to test your place among our people." "What kind of test?" Jackson asked. She hesitated, then looked away. "One where I can't help you," she said, "even if I wanted to." He followed the advisor down a long hall of ancient statues, each carved from obsidian, with glowing eyes that seemed to follow him as he walked past. The circle of elders was a domed chamber with a high ceiling, stars visible through a crystal skylight. 7 robed figures sat in a wide circle, their faces hidden, voices like wind through stone. "You carry the bond," one of them said, "but do you carry our fate as well?" Jackson stayed silent, unsure how to answer. Another spoke. "You risked death for strangers. But was it strategy or sacrifice?" Then another. "Would you betray your world for hers?" Their questions weren't just words, they struck his chest like waves hitting rock. He wanted to shout that he wasn't a traitor, that he was just trying to help, but he didn't. He stood still, letting the silence speak for him. Finally, the central elder stood, revealing a thin, glowing dagger in their hand. "Then prove it," they said, "not with blood, but with will." The floor beneath Jackson shimmered, and in an instant he was no longer in the chamber. He was back in the battlefield. Flames around him, screams echoing his worst memory. But something was wrong. Virea was there, trapped under rubble, bleeding, calling his name, "Jackson. Jackson, help me." He rushed toward her, but his legs felt like stone. Smoke choked him. Heat burned his skin. But he pushed forward, crawling, dragging himself across shattered glass and alien bones. It wasn't real, he knew that, but the pain felt real. The fear felt real. He reached her, held her hand, tried to lift the D-brand just like that. The illusion shattered. He was back in the circle, panting, sweating, bleeding from a real cut on his arm. The dagger now rested on the ground beside him, glowing brighter. The elders stood in unison, silent for a long moment. Then one said, "You did not break." Another added, "You chose another's life over your fear." The central figure walked to him, placing a hand over his wound. "You are not one of us," they said, "but today you have earned the right to walk among us." The wound sealed with a soft light, leaving a faint glowing mark like a symbol pressed into his skin. He was led back to the royal quarters, where Virea stood waiting. She didn't speak at first, just stared at the mark on his arm. "You passed," she whispered, eyes wide. "Even my mother didn't think you would." Jackson exhaled slowly. "It felt like I died in there." "You did," she said, stepping closer. "But only the part of you that belonged to Earth." She reached out, touched the mark with her fingertips, and closed her eyes. Their bond pulsed again, stronger now. Clearer. Like a thread tied between two hearts beating in sync. Then the Queen entered, robes trailing like a river behind her, face as cold as before. "The elders have spoken," she said, "but the galaxy has not." "What now?" Jackson asked, tired. "But standing tall, you will stand before the people," she said. "Not as a soldier or a guest, but as the bonded one." Virea inhaled sharply. "You mean?" The Queen nodded slowly. "If he is to be trusted," she said, "let the galaxy see him through your eyes." And as she turned away, her voice echoed back like a quiet storm. "But remember, love can unite worlds or break them." The banners of the Varnari Empire rippled in the sky like rivers of fire and silk. Jackson stood in the middle of a floating platform. High above the crowd that gathered in the Capitol Square, tens of thousands of alien faces stared up at him, some curious, some angry, others cold with judgment. His uniform had been replaced by ceremonial robes. Dark gray with a single silver line across the chest, the mark of an outsider bonded to royalty. Viera stood beside him, her hand not touching his, but close enough that he felt her warmth through the air. Drums echoed through the city like the beating of a giant heart. This was not a celebration. It was a trial of public acceptance. A dangerous display where one wrong word could start another war. The Queen appeared on the highest balcony, tall and still like a statue of ice and moonlight. Her voice echoed through the open sky, carried by technology and something older than machines. "My daughter has made her choice," she said, "but now you must make yours." She looked directly at Jackson, even from a great distance, her golden eyes piercing. "Why should our people trust a human?" she asked, loud enough for the stars to hear. Jackson didn't move at first, didn't speak. Then he stepped forward, slow but steady, letting the silence stretch until even the birds stopped flying. "I don't expect your trust," he said finally. His voice steady. "Not after what my kind has done." Murmurs broke out in the crowd. Some sharp, some uncertain. "But I didn't come here to pretend," he said. "I came because your daughter believed in something neither of us fully understood." He turned to look at Virea, her eyes soft but unblinking. "I came because she saw in me something no one else did, and I saw in her something I didn't know I was missing." He looked back to the Queen and then to the crowd. "If peace means giving up pride, then let me give mine," he said, raising his hand slowly. "Let this mark on my arm remind you I bled for you without being asked." The crowd went quiet again, this time deeper, heavier. Then from the front, a Varnari elder stepped forward and spoke. "I saw this human walk through illusion fire and choose another's life over his own." Another voice joined. "I saw him share memory with the princess and return without lies in his heart." But then a voice from the far side of the crowd shouted, "And yet he is still human. What happens when his people betray us again?" Silence followed, sharp as a blade. Jackson didn't flinch, but he didn't answer either. Instead, Vera stepped forward, her voice calm, but louder than ever before. "Then let the betrayal fall on me," she said, "for I was the one who asked for the bond." She turned toward the Queen now, her voice shaking only slightly. "If you exile him, exile me," she said. "If you fear him, fear what I've become through him." Jackson stared at her, stunned. She hadn't told him she was willing to give up everything, not her title, not her place among her people. But now she stood there, offering it all without hesitation. The Queen's lips parted slightly, just a flicker of reaction. Then she raised her hand. And the drums stopped. "All of Varnari will remember this moment," she said, voice cold again, the daughter of a queen. Choosing a human over a throne, the crowd shifted, not in anger, but in awe. Whispers spread like wildfire, and something began to change in the air. Not full acceptance. Not yet, but the ice had cracked. Then the queen turned toward the eastern tower and gave a single nod. The sound of gates unlocking echoed through the sky, followed by the slow, deep roar of engines from behind the towers. A ship rose ancient, armored, and covered in symbols of war. "The trials of legacy begin at dawn," the queen said. "Let the bond be tested in the field where words hold no power." Vera's breath caught. Jackson looked up at the ship, confusion turning to realization. "She's sending us to war," he said quietly. Vera nodded, her voice low. "Not to fight the enemy, but to see if we survive together." He reached for her hand, and this time she didn't hesitate. Their fingers locked as the ship's shadow passed over the city, and the crowd below finally began to cheer not for the queen, but for them. The sky was black when they landed, not because of night, because smoke had swallowed the light. The warship's engines cooled behind them. A giant beast breathing its last breath. Jackson stepped onto the ash-covered soil, the ground cracking. Under his boots like dry bone, Varaya followed close. Her cloak pulled tight around her, though the cold wasn't from wind, it came from something deeper. This wasn't a battlefield, not anymore. It was a graveyard, a dead zone between empires, where silence screamed louder than weapons ever could. Their orders were simple: survive 3 days in the ruins of the hollow sector. Together, unguarded, unwatched, the queen had called it a test of spirit. But Jackson knew better. This was a place where honor faded and instincts ruled. They were alone, truly alone. No advisors, no guards. No cameras, just the memory of war and the eyes of things that still crawled in the smoke. "This place isn't empty," Jackson said, his voice low, hand on his sidearm. Varaya nodded slowly, scanning the ruins, her eyes glowing faintly in. "The dark, it used to be one of our temples," she whispered, "until your kind burned it to the ground." Jackson didn't argue. He couldn't. He'd seen the records, even the ones Earth tried to hide. "Then I guess this is where our bond is truly tested," he said. They found shelter inside the broken remains of an old structure. Walls half-eaten by fire, ceiling cracked open like a wounded sky. They didn't speak much that first night. Varaya curled up near the wall, watching shadows move like ghosts through broken glass. Jackson sat with his back to the door, weapon drawn, thoughts racing. It wasn't the silence that bothered him, it was the memories. The bond still pulsed between them, even without words. He felt her fear, and she felt his guilt. By morning, the ash storm had settled, but the world was no brighter. Jackson walked through the ruins while Vieira collected water from a cracked pipe still leaking clean condensation. He found old bones, both human and Varnari, twisted together under fallen beams. "They died fighting," he muttered, "and no one remembers their names." Varaya approached silently behind him. "Then remember them now," she said. He nodded, standing still, offering a moment of quiet. That's when the ground shook. Just slightly, then again, harder. From the north side of the ruins came a sound like metal dragging across stone. Jackson grabbed Varaya's hand and pulled her behind a wall as something massive moved through the smoke. It wasn't alive, not fully an old Earth combat drone, still running on corrupted orders. Its metal shell was cracked, but its eyes glowed red. And its weapons were still sharp. It scanned the area with broken logic, hunting anything that moved. Varaya looked at Jackson, whispering, "We can't outrun it. We don't have to. he whispered back. We just have to confuse it. Together, they moved as one, Jackson running left, Viraya sprinting right. Drawing its sensors apart, it fired blindly. Spraying molten plasma across the dead rocks, Jackson rolled behind a boulder. Pulling an old pulse grenade from his belt. "Cover your eyes," he shouted. He threw the device, and it exploded in a silent flash, flooding the air with light and static. The drone froze, sensors fried. Systems flickering. Jackson didn't wait. He ran forward, jumped onto its back, ripped open the panel, and slammed his boot into the core. The drone collapsed with a dying scream, sparks raining like fireflies in the dark. Silence returned. Viraya ran to him, grabbing his arm, checking his chest, his breath, his eyes. "You're insane," she said, voice shaking. "You're not the first to say that," he replied, coughing. She didn't let go of his arm, even after the danger passed. They sat beside the broken drone, their hearts slowly calming. "That machine didn't care who we were," she said quietly, "human or Varnari. It would have killed us both. Maybe that's the lesson," Jackson said, looking up at the red sky. "Some things in this galaxy don't care about race, loyalty, or blood. Only survival." She leaned her head against his shoulder, and this time, the bond between them was quiet, not heavy. Not confused, just warm. For the first time since landing, they rested in each other's presence, and far above them, in the hidden sensors of the orbiting royal cruiser, the Queen watched without speaking. Her golden eyes narrowing as she whispered, "They're not breaking. They are becoming." The third day began in silence. Not the empty kind, but the heavy stillness that comes before something final. Jackson awoke to the soft hum of Viraya's breathing beside him. Both wrapped in what little warmth they had left, the ruined building had begun to shift in the wind. Groaning like an old beast ready to collapse, he sat up slowly, muscles aching, body bruised, but heart steady. This wasn't about survival anymore. It was about what they become in the middle of nothing. He looked down at her, and though she was still asleep, her hand was gripping his tight, as if letting go might send him back to earth. When she opened her eyes, she didn't speak. But he felt something in his chest stir, something deep, unnamed, but real. "We should go," she whispered finally. "The beacon will activate soon, and they'll come for us." "Do you think your mother will be pleased?" Jackson asked, brushing dust from her shoulder. Vera gave a soft, tired laugh. "My mother isn't looking for joy. She's looking for truth." Together, they walked toward the ancient beacon tower, past the broken bones and silent machines. Jackson limped slightly, the fight with the drone still leaving fire in his side. But he didn't complain. At the beacon's base, Viraya pulled out a small device and pressed her fingers against the surface. The old structure pulsed with light once. Twice then, a silent signal climbed into the sky. The test was over. Now came judgment. As they waited, a strange wind rose from the east, warm, soft, but charged with energy. Jackson looked up and saw something that made his breath catch. Dozens of royal ships were descending, not one or two, but the full high guard. "They're coming for you," he muttered. "No," she said. "They're coming for us." The Queen's ship landed first, its silver surface gleaming in the red sky. From it stepped not just the Queen, but her entire council, advisors, elders, and even young nobles. All silent, all watching. Jackson stood tall, covered in soot, blood on his sleeves. But he didn't look down. Vera stood beside him, chin lifted, her hand finding his without hesitation. The Queen stepped forward, her face calm, unreadable as always. "You survived," she said quietly. Together, Viraya nodded. "More than that, we protected each other." And the bond held. The Queen looked to her daughter, her golden eyes softening for just a moment, then shifting to Jackson. "There were those who believed you would fail," she said. that a human could never understand what loyalty truly means to us. Jackson didn't reply. He had nothing left to prove with words. So he raised his arm and showed the scar the drone left deep and dark. "But real, this isn't your blood," he said. "But I spilled it for your people anyway." The Queen stared at him in silence, and then she smiled, barely. It was not warmth, it was respect. "The bond stands," she said. "Let it be known across the stars. A human has earned a place beside the blood of queens." A gasp moved through the nobles like wind through leaves. One advisor even stepped forward, whispering, "But, Your Grace." "What of tradition?" The Queen raised a hand, silencing him with a single glance. "Tradition did not bleed for peace," she said. "They did." She turned to Varaya and Jackson once more, her voice now carrying across the gathering. "If you accept this union, it will not only change your lives, it will change history." Vera looked at Jackson, her voice soft but unshaking. "I accept." Jackson took a breath slow. Sharan said, "So do I." Cheers didn't break out. Not right away, but one elder bowed, then another, then a third, until the entire circle around them lowered their heads. The war hadn't ended in fire or surrender or speeches. It ended in choice, in bond. In pain endured together, and in that silence, a new age began. Later, when they stood alone in the Queen's private garden, Vera turned to Jackson and said, "Do you think it was love, or just survival?" Jackson smiled gently, brushing his fingers against hers. "Maybe it started as survival," he said, "but what we have now, it feels like something that was waiting to happen." She leaned her head against his chest. And for the first time in generations, the stars above Varnari Prime burned peacefully.